Cemetery and the Lakeview Monument Works, and we want to think that all the Italians who moved to Little Italy carved monuments for Joseph Carabelli. Not really. Many of them got jobs working in the cemeteries. They kept the grounds, they planted the trees, and they created the landscape of that cemetery. And as the community grew, because it was on a railroad track, businesses and industries felt that that was a great labor force for them. So if you go to the McCullough building of the Cleveland Institute of Art, you need to remember that was a Ford assembly plant, which many area Italians worked. So there were two communities where somebody came in, and Pamela Dorazio Dean, our curator for Italian history, can do this much better than I, but it's not only Little Italy, it's eventually Collinwood. It is also Fulton and Clark around St. Rocco's Parish, and splitting off from Fulton and Clark. You have the area around West 65th, we now Gordon Square, which is just really, really growing, and then a community that grows up at 116th and Woodland. And a little community that people miss is St. Mary's Church, Blue Rock Springs. So if you're driving up Stokes Boulevard, you see that church, which is, it's next, there's a mosque across the street from it now. There were Italians everywhere. And how were they greeted? Well, we have to be honest and frank that Italians were not the most popular immigrants when they came to the United States. And along with Slavic immigrants like my own ancestors, there were some issues that people felt about the new immigrants coming in, but they built things, they changed things. And I'd like to look at attitudes and go a little sideways here. You know, how do I see these immigrants today? How do I see their contributions? There are two things. I walk to work through Little Italy almost every day. And the one thing I see is Murray Hill Road, which is still Red Brick Street, right? You really love that street when your car slips and slides? You should try riding a thin-wheel road bike on it. Why is it still unpaved? Because it's a monument. When the Italian immigrants came to cities like Cleveland, New York, Chicago, and Boston at the end of the 19th, early 20th century, many of them found jobs building infrastructure. And that street, Red Brick Street, which was paved by Italians, is I think a monument to those people. But then that puts us into a box that we often find ourselves in with immigrants of that period. Well, they were all laborers. They just came with their backs to do work, but there's much more than that. Because if you look at Severance Hall, if you look at any of the cut stone work, if you look at the frescoes, if you look at the mosaic work, in terms of the 20th century buildings, early 20th century, into the present, in Cleveland and other areas, you're finding skilled artisans at work, much the same skills that Joseph Carabelli brought to his monument works. And Carabelli and others like him rose to prominence. They created really a connection with the Italian community between the broader community. A little story about Joseph Carabelli. You all know where Mayfield Road goes to, right? It goes out to South Euclid, Lyndhurst, and Chesterland, and you can find good Italian food all the way along that street because people move it. Now, it actually went to Forest Hill, which was John D. Rockefeller's estate. And when Rockefeller was in Cleveland for half the year, very often he would go from the downtown offices up to his estate along Mayfield Road. And as the Italian colonies, they call it, was growing, Carabelli, who was a leader, knew that they needed a day nursery. And so he approached Mr. Rockefeller, who he knew through his Lakeview connections. And it was through that approach that Alta House Social Suburb was created, named after Rockefeller's daughter. Interesting connection from an Italian to the richest man in the United States. And so that's Alta House. If you looked around the corner in the early 20th century in Little Italy, there's this big stone house, you all know it, at Cornell and McMurray Hill Road. That was the house of Dr. Giovanni Botticelli, cardiopulmonary specialist, who had trained actually in the United States and New York, ran drugstores, came to Cleveland, married a young expert in Italian literature who we all remember, Il Ciappolo, Orfeo Botticelli. She was a professor for many years at Western Reserve University. She kept Italianata, the Italian language, alive. And Dr. Botticelli and his wife became the epitome of Italian culture in Cleveland. But here we are in 1930 with 23,000 Italians in the city of Cleveland. That was the peak. Immigration was restricted. And the community's growth slowed down because of restrictions, slowed down because of the war. But beginning after the Second War, and particularly after 1965, Italian migration, in 1965, we changed our restrictions. There are no blue books, there is no test after this, I promise you. We changed our restricted immigration law to allow anybody who had the skills and family connections to come in. And many of you will remember that Italian immigration began to prosper again. And one of the interesting things, if you look at statistics in Cleveland in 1980, there's still 10,000 Italian-born people in Cleveland. You know, here in Little Italy, out at Our Lady of Mount Carmel, the West 65th Street area. So it was an area, it was a community that continued to get replenished. Today, to sort of bring this and give you some perspective, because we have many things ahead of us tonight, 8.1% of the 1.29 million people who live in Cuyahoga County in 2010 claimed Italian as part of their heritage. I think that's an underestimation, but that's the way the census is done then. But it is there. In 2012, we are sitting here celebrating Il Cenacolo. We are looking at the growth of an Italian collecting program that has been made possible not only by the Historical Society, but by a community that is extremely proud of its history, extremely trustful of us. We'd love to have that trust. It's something we've worked on with communities here for many, many years. And we're looking at a community in which, for better or for worse, every August 15th, in Little Italy, the last of the great Italian street festivals, at St. Anthony's used to have 10 a year. On Lower Woodland, 10 years, the last, well, St. Rocco's has one too, so, you know. But the Feast of the Assumption, and it gets national press. Now, you can look at it one way or the other, but Italianata, that neighborhood has become something that I don't think many of us would have imagined 40 years ago, that it would become attractive for people. But behind all of that is one other thing in Little Italy that I look at, that I see every time. And it's Murray Hill School. You ever looked at Murray Hill School closely? It's once, I think, the most populated public school in Cleveland. Look at it closely. The brickwork is fantastic. Look at the tower. The tower is a Tuscan tower in the middle of a neighborhood settled by people from Sicily and Campobasso. This is what the school district decided to build for its Italian students, a monument to their heritage, a monument that referenced that part of Italy that so many Americans going back to Thomas Jefferson and before knew so well. The Renaissance, the language, the literature, the painting, the sculpture, the art, and the effect that Italy has had on Western civilization. So within that neighborhood, with streets paved by laborers, there stands a building that really reminds us what it's all about a community that has many things to say to many of us. And it's been my pleasure to work with so many people in trying to come to understand that community, and I'm grateful that we've allowed a man with a different vowel at the end of his name to work in Italian American history. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Very much for this very, very interesting journey through the Italian immigration in Cleveland. Now a special welcome to Mrs. Pamela Durazio Dean. There she comes. Pam is the Associate Curator of Italian American History here at the West Missouri Historical Society. Her invaluable help has been absolutely incredible in the organization of this evening, and we really are very, very thankful to her for having done all this for us and with us. She will be talking to us about the preservation of the Cenacolo archives. Thank you.
Buonasera and grazie, Dr. Molino. The Italian American Collection was founded at the Western Reserve Historical Society in 2006, and I was the first curator hired to oversee that collection. Before then, there hadn't been a concerted effort to collect Italian documents, although some had been coming in, but there wasn't one person dedicated to that. And I think that's been very important because I've been able to dedicate my time getting to know the community, getting to know what groups in the community are important to document, what people, what neighborhoods are important to document. And that's what I do, is I try to collect the tangible objects, the papers, the records, the photographs, the artifacts that will help us understand and learn about the history of the Italians in Northeast Ohio. So when I started in the position, the first two individuals. Among the first two individuals that I was introduced to were Alfonso D'Amelia and Gino Collage. We all had lunch at Primo Vino, and I also learned about Il Cenacolo at that time. And as my time in the position went on, as I was working, I just kept hearing more and more about Il Cenacolo. I was able to attend a few of the meetings, and I realized early on in my work that the story of the Italians in Cleveland would not be complete without preserving the history of Il Cenacolo. Il Cenacolo is a very important piece of the story of Italians in Northeast Ohio. And the records of a group, the records of an organization are extremely important and extremely meaningful to them. And it often takes time to build a relationship and to build the trust to be able to hand over your history to another organization. And the timing was right. This past year I met with DiCleveland and Elda Baroni, and they showed me some of the wonderful scrapbooks that Mary Camelli so dedicated so much of her time to take good care of all of this stuff and organize it so well. And I was very pleased and excited that they finally decided that the Western Reserve Historical Society Italian Collection would be a good place for them to donate their documents, and that we promised that we would take very good care of them. We have excellent facilities here that the documents will be preserved for generations. The correct temperature controls, the light controls, the humidity, and we also can make them accessible. So, you know, we did this exhibit on the stone carvers in Northeast Ohio, and if it weren't for the Carabelli collection that the Carabelli family donated 2 years ago, I wouldn't be able to fully tell that story. So there will probably come a time when I will be able to use the Il Cenacolo documents to tell the story of the important contributions the group made and has made over the past 85 years to the community as a whole in Northeast Ohio. So I'm very excited, I'm very grateful that you have all chosen to donate these documents to the Historical Society. I think it's a wonderful addition to the collection, and I look forward to maintaining the relationship with Il Cenacolo and continuing to preserve the history as the group goes on into the future. Thank you.
Let me introduce now to you Dr. Serena Scaiola, who is the Honorary Consul of Italy in Cleveland. Very important position. We're very fortunate to have the Honorary Consul office in Cleveland. Not many cities have that. So we're very, very happy to have her with us. She's been an incredible bridge for us to Italy. She has had an incredible amount of activities that she's promoted in numerous initiatives here in Cleveland to enhance our visibility of our culture and our industry. So the Italian country has a lot to be thankful to her for her work. Serena will be talking to us about the relations between the Cleveland Italian community and Italy. Serena.
The necessary premise to my brief remarks is that the present relationship between Italy and the United States is strong, and it's probably never been as strong as it is right now. I'm sure you all know that last year, throughout 2011, Italy celebrated the 150th anniversary of its unification, and throughout the country there were a very numerous events that were planned and organized, and the level of involvement and the level of the participations by Italian Americans as well as Italian was really overwhelming. Just to confirm that the relationship and the level of attachment that Italian Americans have to their roots is still very, very strong. In part, I think, is because of the great work that cultural associations such as Il Cenacolo have done and continue doing in preserving our history. In part, I think, is also due to the new wave of immigration from Italy, which I will briefly talk about, which is, I think, fascinating because it's completely reversed from what you are very familiar with. So together, the two things I think create a very particular situation in which, as important it is to preserve the history of our communities, I think it is equally important to think of how we can continue preserving it for the future generations. And since the reality of our immigration has changed drastically. So I am honored to have been invited to be here tonight to this very special celebration. And I guess which contribution or purpose could Italian-American associations most effectively serve these days to help preserve our cultural heritage for the future generations and the cultural identity of Italy is what I would like to briefly reflect on with you this evening. As I'm sure you know, and it's been said already, over 5.5 million Italians immigrated to the United States starting roughly 1820. The greatest surge of immigration, which occurred between 1880 and 1920, alone brought more than 4 million Italians to America. About 80% of them came from southern Italy, a largely agricultural and overpopulated region, impoverished by centuries of foreign misrule, as well as the devastating economic measure imposed on the South after the Italian unification in 1861. In this country, most Italians began their work as unskilled manual workers in eastern cities, mining camps, and in agriculture. During the era of mass emigration, rural families in Italy could not afford to place a high value on education, since they needed their children to help with chores in the fields as soon as they were old enough. And oftentimes, this attitude could not be changed upon arriving in America, when youngsters were expected to help support their family as soon as possible. Usually with no knowledge of English and with little, if any, formal education, many of the immigrants were compelled to accept the poorest paying and most undesirable job and were frequently exploited by the middlemen. Many sought housing in the older sections of the large northeastern cities in which they settled, which we know as Little Italies, often in overcrowded, substandard tenements. About a third of the immigrants, so-called the birds of passage, intended to stay in the United States for only limited time, followed by a return to Italy with enough in saving to reestablish themselves there. While many did return, others chose to stay or were prevented from returning by the outbreak of World War I. These first immigrants established the economic base for a thriving Cleveland Italian community and provided leadership, direction, and employment for the thousands who would follow in the years to come until World War I, together with the restrictive Emergency Quota Act in 1921 and the Immigration Act in 24 effectively put an abrupt end to the large flow of Italian immigrants into this country. But why did it come to Cleveland, hundreds of miles from the traditional disembarkation port of New York? I think it's also a very interesting point. The single overriding factor of local ties brought them here. It has been estimated that 3/4 of all immigrants proceeded along a well-traveled course, which included specific areas of the cities. And the main reason they seem to, the main reason which seems so very important in transatlantic migration to Cleveland was that many Italians were from the same village and districts. Studies indicate that about half of all of the Italians migrating to these cities moved from only 10 villages in southern Italy between Sicily, Campania, and Abruzzo. So these three regions alone provided about 70% of all of the Italians coming to Cleveland. Because they did arrive as part of a migrant chain, the chances of remaining in the city were increased. More importantly, their association with and participation in the several hometown societies formed in Cleveland to assist the immigrants gave the needed stability to the newly arrived. The impact of these hometown societies upon the Italian immigrants cannot be overstated. No institutions better reflects the uniqueness of Cleveland's Italian community than the hometown society, enabling the Paesani to transplant the solidarity of their native villages, strengthening a narrow cultural identity they already possessed, and helping keep them from being absorbed by Cleveland's greater Italian community. Meeting weekly, they spoke in their village dialect, maintained family acquaintances, continued their ties with their Italian village, buried their dead, cared for widows and children, and found employment for the unemployed and housing for those without shelter. These organizations provided the much-needed link with the old country, and they were a strong factor in the gradual acculturation of the Paesani into the texture of this society. 19th century America saw the rapid growth of mutual aid societies throughout the land, and in the best tradition of volunteering and cooperation, thousands of such community organizations were formed. Well, now let's take the same city, Cleveland. Fast forward by a little over 100 years to 2012. Look at the recent immigration pattern from Italy over the last 20 years, as well as the modern Italian immigrant. And I don't even know that immigrant truly is the best way to describe Italians that have been coming to United States recently. I think we look at ourselves, the modern word, the modern term is expats. The juxtaposition between past and present is quite striking. These days, young immigrants are highly educated, fluent in English, experienced businessmen or successful business owners, skilled professionals, seasoned travelers, career-oriented, technology-savvy individuals. They are doctors, researchers, scientists, consultants, professors, museum curators, musicians, or accomplished artists. They are not discriminated against because of their background. Rather, they are often sought after precisely because of it. They don't think of their cultural identity in terms of the small village, city, or even the region from which they come. Rather, they identify themselves as Italian, and moreover, their mindset is European. From this altogether different viewpoint, what function can the hundreds of local Italian-American associations continue serving these days, given that globalization has transformed Paesani into citizens of the world, thus eradicating the core reason for mutual aid societies to exist? A fascinating scientific study concluded that the true cultural identity of an individual does not come from the country of birth, parents, or even surroundings, neither from formal education nor from traditions observed or food consumed. Rather, it lies in the language spoken. In short, you are what you speak. Therefore, in an effort to help pass on our true cultural identity in this country to the future generations, I think what clubs or associations could and should try to do is to concentrate the majority of their efforts on their youngest members, exposing them as early on and as intensively as possible to language learning opportunities, both locally and abroad in Italy. Raising money for fully funded scholarship opportunities in Italy, in my opinion, should be the top priority for any organization, such as what the Cenacolo has been doing, wishing truly to preserve and promote the true Italian culture. 2013 has been declared the year of the Italian culture in the USA. Special initiatives will be taking place over the course of the next 12 months. Perhaps this could be the perfect occasion and opportunity for clubs and organizations to pull their resources together and afford a few deserving students the chance to discover their true cultural identity and cherish it. Just an idea. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate the contributions made by Il Cenacolo in its 80-plus years of cultural activity, and thank its members for the numerous scholarships already given so far to remarkable students. Congratulations on donating the archives to the Western Reserve. It will be a wonderful opportunity for, as I said, young people to come and take a look at their history. So, complimenti e buon lavoro. Grazie.
Very good. I think we're coming along very well. Okay, now, it's a great pleasure to introduce to all of you a very special person. Signor Alfonso de Emilia, Cavaliere Alfonso de Emilia. He's a Cavaliere della Repubblica Italiana. It's an extremely important honor that he was bestowed upon him a few years ago. Alfonso has been a good friend for many years. We go back to the Zanonis and way before. He has been the president of this organization in the past. He's been involved in all different ways with the Cenacolo. And he's been a member of the Cenacolo since 1965. Alfonso is going to give us like nobody else can, a historic overview of the Cenacolo, and then you'll have a few other things to do with us. Alfonso?
Buonasera a tutti. I was told to be very, very brief. First of all, I would like to give my personal greetings. Dr. Gaynor B. Davis, President and CEO, Western Reserve Historical Society. An old friend, Dr. John J. Grabowski, historian, Vice President, Senior Vice President, Western Reserve Historical Society, and above all, the Managing Editor of Cleveland Encyclopedia. Mrs. Pamela Dorazio Dean, Associate Curator, and of course, in charge of Il Cenacolo's archives. I also would like to greet Dr. and Mrs. Sam Savin. Dr. Savin, former Dean of Arts and Science at Case Western Reserve University, is an old and dear friend of the Cenacolo. And interesting, I would like to pass on this information. He is the Geochemical Society Treasurer here in the United States, and is headed for Italy, 2013. Of all places, La Bella Firenze, dove avrà luogo the international meeting of Geochemical Society. My special greetings to Dr. Serena Scaiola, Honorary Vice Consul of Cleveland, and of course, to our President, Dr. Marcello Medina. The first Italian immigrant Americans arrived at the shores of Lake Erie in the mid-1860s. And by the late 1920s, there was a flourishing Italian colony of Cleveland, which at the time was the 6th largest city in the country. Il Cenacolo Italiano di Cleveland was thus born in 1928, thanks to Dr. Leonardo Sammartini, a dentist, Dr. Robert Vinson, a past president of Western Reserve University. And of course, the Italian consul in Cleveland at the time, Dr. Lorenzo. It was simply named Il Circolo, the club. But after 2 years, at the suggestion of the new Italian consul in Cleveland, Dr. Guilego, Il Circolo was rebaptized and named after Leonardo da Vinci's painting Il Cenacolo, the Last Supper. In our case, it simply means that an intimate group of friends in the noble Renaissance tradition who are interested in the arts in general and the Italian culture in particular, they felt the necessity of expressing on a higher level intellectually. So, Il Cenacolo immediately became a spiritual link between Italy and the United States. In addition to a collection of Italian books at Giancarlo University, the Grasselli Library, and the annual scholarship for the study of the Italian language, Il Cenacolo offers a series of lectures each academic year. Throughout the years, it has been a source of inspiration for the cultivation of things Italian. For instance, in 1961, Il Cenacolo solemnly observed the first centenary of the political unification of Italy, l'unità d'Italia. In 1965, it celebrated the 7th centenary of the birth of il sommo poeta Dante Alighieri, whose artistic creation done by our member of the Cenacolo sorry, he's not here. Buon aiuto. The sculpture can be admired in the Italian Cultural Garden, Rockefeller Park. In 1978, Il Cenacolo brought to John Carroll University the 11th convention of the American Italian Historical Association. In 1992, it celebrated Cristoforo Colombo's discovery of America, and in 1996, in conjunction with the Cleveland bicentennial celebration, Il Cenacolo once again organized a symposium, John Carroll University. The theme was the Italians of Cleveland and their contribution to a better America. They singled out in this symposium Bishop Villa, who had to leave because of other engagements. They singled out Bishop Anthony Pilla, Bishop of Cleveland, Anthony J. Celebrezze Sr., Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, composer Henry Manzini, federal judge Frank Battisti, and Marta Abba, the muse and principal interpreter of Luigi Pirandello. Like all other organizations, Il Cenacolo is the collective body of its members. Il Cenacolo is all of you. Cenacolo is you and I. Above all, Il Cenacolo is the honoring of this evening, Mary Louise Comella, who joined Il Cenacolo in 1945 while a student at Western Reserve University. She is indeed the historian of Il Cenacolo with 12 scrapbooks and 7 photo albums. Mary Comella has the affection and most sincere thanks for her total dedication to Il Cenacolo Italiano di Cleveland. Now, Dr. Marcello Neri.
We're getting down to the clue of our evening. We'd like to have Mrs. Comella. Would you like to introduce her? Marie Louise Comella. lives been here, simply as that. So, of course, we have a tremendous debt to her work for all these years. She's been a member of the Chinatlo for way too many years, we won't say how many. But she's been obviously very instrumental in creating all this. So, I'd like to hear a few words from her. Would you be able to? Would you be willing to?
For the first time in my life, I'm speechless. I have a story on Bishop Hill, which I would like to tell. Adia, Lily Adia, was a student of mine, and she is here tonight. And when her son graduated from high school, she had a party for him, and Bishop Miller was present. So I said to her, "My, you rate high. You have the bishop." She says, "He better be here. He is my cousin." Bishop Philip is not a cousin of mine, but he's a great friend, and I thank him for his invocation tonight. And along that, I thank every one of you here for a delightful evening. Thank you.
Stay right there. This is a simple thought that we would like to present to you in recognition for all of your work and dedication to the Chinatlo, and we certainly hope that you will enjoy it. Thank you.
And especially for being the secretary on correspondence uninterruptedly for over 50 years.
The next person is also a very important person for the Chinatlo, Mrs. Rita Jordan Kelly, alias Rita. Rita has been, she's the current president of the Chinatlo. She has been the president of the past a number of times. And Rita essentially is the Chinatlo these days. Has been a member again since 1969. She's been involved in all different aspects of the running of the Chinatlo. And we are obviously forever thankful to her for all her efforts and dedication to our organization. So Rita is going to give us a few remarks on her own, and then we'll stay here for the remaining of our sermon. Rita. We're extremely happy, we're fantastic. Come back, right?
Good evening, everyone. My name through the Chinatlo has become a household name, and I'm truly proud. The Chinatlo for me has made many, many things, from the spiritual art, which the Chinatlo is a spiritual word, the Last Supper, the Ultima Cena. That's what Chinatlo means, and it's that our Lord went to a table with some of his best friends to celebrate the Last Supper. Well, this tonight is not the Last Supper. But it is a beautiful, beautiful name given to a corpus such as ours, at the beginning was called the Circolo. I don't remember the name responsible for changing it to the Cenacolo, but I am forever grateful. I am proud to be part of it. I met the most fantastic people in my life, that they will be with me always. Thank you.
Okay, beautiful. So we're moving right along. We're now going to ask Dr. Davis to read the ceremonial certificate of transfer of the archives.
This is the donation of records to the Western Reserve Historical Society. Il Cenacolo Italiano di Cleveland, founded in 1928 and dedicated to promoting the Italian language and culture, will donate its organizational records and archives to the Western Reserve Historical Society, which will ensure the preservation of these records for future generations. By signing below, the following representatives of both organizations affirm and express their approval of the above statement. This is signed on this 8th day of September 2012. I'd like to...
Thank you. Thank you very much. Actually, before we begin the signing ceremony, we would like to have one of the experts donated from our president. It's a ceremonial gesture. There's many more. Besides this one, this is just a very small sample of all the things that are going to be transferred. But we're very proud to be able to do that. Thank you. We're now ready to actually sign the certificate. We have special pens. It's not like the presidential pens. ink is dried, essentially. The records are yours. Thank you very much. Thank you. The certificate signature concludes the official portion of our celebration sermon tonight. And I'd like to thank all the speakers for their involvement and their very interesting commentaries tonight, and for all their help. And also like to thank you, Joe Abate and Jerry Solero, for the music, which will continue shortly. And also a particular thank you to the incredible ladies with whom I've had the pleasure to work for the last couple of months. Elsa Boroni, and incredible, fantastic work with all that. So without their help, we could have been here tonight. So thank you all three for this beautiful, beautiful contribution to our program. I also would like to remind our members of our next regular Chinaco meeting, which will be Monday, the 8th of October, at the usual place at Jens Manor. And Gigi Lunardi will be talking about Pasqua. Enjoy desserts, coffee, and please try to go and view the Domare exhibit, which is next door. And again, thank you for all being here, and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thanks very much. I'd like to invite all the past presidents for a photo opportunity before we go away. Thank you again. Good night.